Dr. B.C. Roy Engineering College extends its heartfelt congratulations for your groundbreaking achievements in your chosen fields. Our visionary contribution have not only made a significant impact within the scientific community, but undoubtedly served as a beacon of inspiration, igniting the curiosity and passion for exploration in countless minds. At Basic Science and Humanities Department of BCREC, fundamental scientific research is at the core of our values. Your unwavering dedication to expanding the frontiers of knowledge and unlocking the secrets of universe embodies this very spirit of exploration we hold dear. Therefore, it is with immense pride that we present these tokens of honor to our esteemed guests. With the kind consent of our Principal Sir and Mr. S. Koviraj, Secretary, Vishwagandha Foundation, I would now request Dr. Dr. Sanjay S. Pawar, Principal, BCREC, to felicitate Dr. Devendra Bish with a bouquet of flower and memento. Please, sir. Thank you, sir, for doing the honors.
Next up, I would now request Professor Dr. Saurabh Ranjan Das, HOD, Basic Science and Humanities Department, BCREC, to felicitate Dr. Saurabh Palik with a bouquet and memento. Thanks, sir, for doing the honors. Moving on, we would request our volunteers to escort our dignitaries back to their respective front row VIP seats. Meanwhile, we will be getting our stage ready for the next session for today. Thank you. I request the volunteers to come to the stage so that we can get the stage ready for today's session. Volunteers, please come.
So without further ado, we have with us Dr. Devendra Bish, the first speaker for today's session. Dr. Devendra Bish, Optical Astronomy Department, Indian Center for Space Physics, Kolkata. Dr. Devendra Bish obtained his PhD under joint supervision of Kumaon University, Nainital and ARI-ES. In 2016, he joined as a postdoctoral fellow at the Physical Research Laboratory, Ahmedabad. From 2018 to May 2022, he was associated with the University of Science and Technology of China as a postdoctoral fellow. In June 2022, he joined the Indian Institute of Astronomy, Bangalore, as a postdoctoral fellow. Since August 2022, he has been serving as a scientist at the Indian Space Center, Physics, Kolkata. So without further ado, may I now call upon the first speaker of the day, Dr. Devendra Bish, The volunteers, please escort Dr. Devendra Best to the stage.
Welcome, sir. The stage is all yours. Please, sir.
Good morning to all of you. Myself, Devendra West, and thank you so much for inviting me, or thank you so much organizer for inviting me for this opportunity to present some interesting talk on stars, galaxies, and universe and all these things. So I would give some brief explanation about the universe and galaxy, star formation, and what happens when star forms, how they start their journey from beginning and what happened after the death of the star. So I will give some light on some brief discussion on all these things. So So how old our universe is? So it reflects that our universe formed after the Big Bang. So just discuss many special type of stars, Chipit stars, which have some variable kind of property. So based on that, Hubble described this Andromeda galaxy is not in our system, just the outside of the solar system. So Hubble is the known as the leader in the galaxy discovery. So based on their classification, based on their size and the shape of many galaxies, Hubble gave different type of galaxies are possible in our universe. So some main type of spiral galaxy, our Milky Way galaxy is also spiral, barrel spiral type, elliptical galaxy, irregular galaxy. So many different type of galaxies are there based on their size and their distribution and their star formation rate properties or many other aspects. So Hubble just classified different type of galaxies based on that. And this is the way how Hubble estimated the distance of many galaxies. Hubble told that galaxies are moving away from us or they are approaching us with some velocity. So this is the simple method how Hubble estimated the distance. So first Hubble found some special star. I told just Chipit variable. Chipit variable means if some star has its property to swell and shrink. So variable means if the star's magnitude is changing, if star's brightness is changing with time, that means it is variable star. So this is some special type of star. So some galaxy, you can see those type of stars in some galaxies. So Hubble found those type of stars in some galaxies, Chipit type of variable stars. And once they found, yeah, this type of star is there. So based on that, so Hubble and Chipit also, there are two type of Chipit variable. One is the short period and other one is the long period. Short period variable, long period variable. So generally in old stars, those stars which formed at the time of the formation of the universe, at the formation of the galaxy, so those are the long period variable stars, very old stars. And the short period variable means which are very young. So young type of star which have periodicity of a couple of days, couple of hours. So that is, so based on that, Hubble estimated the distance of many galaxies. So based on those special type of stars, Hubble estimated distance and Hubble proved that the universe is expanding or galaxies are moving away from us or approaching towards us. Yeah. So now I will give some information about galaxy. What is galaxy actually? Galaxy is the collection of large number of stars and interstellar material and so many things held together by strong gravitational force. That is galaxy actually. So this is our Milky Way galaxy, and right now we are here. You can see this is our location. The solar system or the location of Earth is here right now. So our Milky Way, and this Milky Way galaxy is not alone actually. So there are many galaxies. Our Milky Way galaxy is the group of some local group actually. Local group means which have some 40-50 such galaxies are together. So our Milky Way galaxy is the part of such group actually, local group of galaxies. And in our Milky Way, the mass of our Milky Way galaxy is around 1.5 trillion times to the mass of the Sun. So that means very huge mass of our Milky Way galaxy. And in our Milky Way galaxy, there are around more than 200 billion stars. And such planets and many other astronomical sources also. And this is Andromeda galaxy, our neighborhood galaxy. And according to the scientists all discussing, studying regularly on the behavior of this Andromeda galaxy, and they found that this Andromeda galaxy is approaching to our Milky Way galaxy with a speed of around 110 km per second. So at this rate, this Andromeda galaxy, after 5 billion years, this will collide with this Milky Way galaxy. After 5 billion years, actually. So then they will merge and they will make a single galaxy. Yeah. So, which is the view of Milky Way galaxy? If you see our Milky Way galaxy from, this is the two pictures actually. So A is the what we see from inside the Earth. So if you see, but in populated actually in the city like Kolkata, Delhi, you can't see this type of view. But if you go some hilly area like Mount Abu, Ladakh, where big astronomical observatories are there, so if you see night sky, so you will definitely see this type of view. This is the band. This is the actually the central part. So you can easily see by your naked eye. So where large number of gases, dust, and so many things are there. So this is clearly visible. But if you see our galaxy from some other galaxy from outside, so our galaxy looks like this. This is the spiral galaxy. So this is just a view how our galaxy looks like from outside or from Earth. Yeah. So now, what type of stars generally found in our Milky Way galaxy? So this is some spiral structure of our Milky Way galaxy, and our Milky Way galaxy has three basic components to its visible matter. The galactic disk, where you see those regions are called the disk area, and this is bulge, the central part, and this is the hollow area. So in hollow area, old stars are there. In disk area, you will see new stars, very young stars, and in some new stars generally form in those areas. Spiral arms are there actually. Spiral arm, gas, dust generally present in the disk area. And in the here, just population 1, population 2 star means population 1 means very younger star actually. Blue star, young star, which are just the newborn star you can say, or the metal rich star, which have very high metallicity. So those type of stars generally found in the disk area. Population 2 means very older. So they are old as the age of our Milky Way galaxy actually. So those are globular clusters. Globular clusters are a group of very old stars. So those stars generally found in the hollow area. This one. So this is the simply classification. What type of stars are found in our Milky Way galaxy? So those are the birthplace of stars, where stars generally form, where new stars generally form. So this is the picture of nebula, or called the stellar nursery. So when you see to the sky through the naked eye, so you see there are some gap in the night sky. If you observe, so you can see that there are large number of stars, but a gap between many stars. So that is not empty actually. So that gap is not empty. That empty space which we see, that is filled by interstellar gas, dust, and so many things. So those can trigger the star formation rate. So this is the stellar nursery, which is composed by the hundreds of solar masses of material, interstellar gas, dust. So new star generally forms in those kind of environments. So new star generally forms here. So this is the picture of same nebula, but this is James Webb Space Telescope. So recently, in 2021, NASA and ESA, European Space Agency, launched the James Webb Space Telescope. So this is the picture of James Webb. James Webb is basically for infrared astronomy, and this picture taken by Hubble Space Telescope. Hubble Space Telescope launched in 1990, and it was focused on the optical counterpart only. So this is the stellar nursery where stars generally form. star forms. So I am giving some brief explanation. So as I told earlier, star form in such environment in molecular cloud. So how star form? What is the condition to form a star? So if the Jean's mass, here I have shown Jean's mass. Jean was the scientist, and Jean gave the critical mass of a molecular cloud. So a molecular cloud should be some sufficient mass, or some, you can say, the critical mass to be in stable position. For example, if I am saying if the critical limit is something 20 solar mass, 20 solar mass is the critical limit of a molecular cloud. It means if the mass of molecular cloud is 20 solar mass or less than that, then it will not undergo gravitational collapse. It will be in stable position. But what happens if mass exceeds than 20 solar mass? If mass exceeds than the critical value, then this molecular cloud will undergo the gravitational collapse, and this molecular cloud, you can say that converted into smaller and smaller pieces after the collapse, and every smaller piece is, you can see that it's a protostar. So protostar is the beginning of the star's life. The first product, you can say that the newborn star, life started from there. So after the molecular cloud breaks into smaller and smaller pieces, and every piece is act like a hot rotating sphere, ball or sphere. So that is protostar. That is the first product in the process of the star's life. Then that protostar started to accrete matter from the surrounding and increase the temperature and pressure. So when temperature becomes very high, to initiate the nuclear fusion reaction at the core of a star, then the star's life just started from there. Because you all know that in every star there is a core, and in the core nuclear fusion reaction is going on. Hydrogen change into helium. When two hydrogen meet, that they form helium. So the same reaction which is going on our sun's core. So that is the thing. So when the temperature becomes enough to initiate the nuclear fusion at the core of a protostar, then it becomes the star. Now its journey starts from there. Now the star is ready, temperature is enough to initiate the nuclear reaction, then journey starts. Now this is the Hertzsprung-Russell diagram. So what happens after this star formation? Now star has formed. So what happens? Actually many stars can be formed from a molecular cloud, not a single star. Actually star forms in groups or pairs. Most of the stars formed from the molecular cloud in pairs. 2 stars or 10 stars or 100,000 or 1 lakh number of stars. It depends on the size of the molecular cloud. Many stars can be formed from a molecular cloud. So what happens when a star forms from a molecular cloud? Then they all align along this diagonal line. This diagonal line is known as main sequence. So on the main sequence, all stars be in the equilibrium position, and equilibrium position means they are stable there. So stars spend most of their life as a main sequence star. As you can see, this is the diagonal line. Stars spend most of their lifetime as a main sequence star, and on the main sequence, nuclear fusion process going on at the core of a star, core of every star. So here you can see the color of different stars. So color is basically based on their size, their temperature, their brightness, and all these things. So the topmost stars are very, very huge, very luminous, and very bright, and they are also short-lived. So what happens? The lifetime is basically depends on the burning rate at the core. So how fast the reaction is going on? We all know that reaction is going on at the core of a star. So some stars are very massive, some stars are less massive. So if a massive star is there, that means the temperature will be very, very high at the core, and the reaction rate will be very high. That means very quickly hydrogen will convert into the helium. So because what is the fuel? So hydrogen is the fuel actually at the core of a star. So if hydrogen is finished, so that means star will leave from there. If no fuel is there, no fuel is left, then star will leave from there. So from the main sequence, star will stay on the main sequence till hydrogen is there at the core. If no hydrogen is the core, then star will leave. So as you can see some evolutionary path, you can see some major stars on the right side, red star, giant, supergiants. So once they all the member of this main sequence, they are moving like this. Now they are moving from the main sequence. This is the path. Why they are moving? Because their hydrogen is finished. So no hydrogen is left at the core of those stars. Yeah. So different type of stars can be formed, as I told. So O is the massive star. So this is the spectral classification of a star based on the temperature. So O, B, A, F, G, K, N. Those are the spectral classification. O star is very bright star. Here you can see O star is around 30,000 Kelvin, and M star temperature drops to 2,000 Kelvin only. So M star is very faint star, and O star is very bright star. So so the different so stars has different color based on their luminosity, their size, mass. So hottest stars appears blue actually. So hottest star appears blue, and then blue white based on their temperature actually. So temperature is going down, and this is yellow star. Our sun is yellow star. Our sun has surface temperature of around 6,000 degree Kelvin. So our sun is yellow star. And now then orange type star, Aldebaran, which are the red giant star, are orange color, and now red color, Antares star. So those are very massive star actually according to their size, but their color is this. This is the color composition of different type of stars. So now the coldest. So if there is if we are saying that blue color means very massive stars. We are talking about massive star, very hot star. And if we are talking about if we are saying red color of a star, red star, that means very faint star. Very faint star, you can say the temperature is very less of that star. So now this is some information about our sun, because our sun is very important, because sun is our own star in our solar system. So all life, energy, life is possible only because of sun. So sun is very important. So we should know all about the sun, what's going on the sun surface, and about different features about the sun. Sun is the largest body in our solar system. So there are some 8 planets, and the sun is at the center. And our solar systems also form in a small part of our Milky Way galaxy after the gravitational collapse of a small molecular cloud. So similarly, how star forms? So this is the same mechanism. So after the gravitational collapse, all the masses gathered at the center where our sun is, and the rest of the mass is thrown into the protoplanetary space here where the planets are. But the maximum mass, 99%, as you can see, 99% mass is only the mass of our sun in our solar system. So maximum mass of the sun. So next. So sun is yellow type star. Sun is average star actually. Sun is not massive star, but sun is nearest to Earth. This is our solar system star. That's why this looks. If we compare our star, rest of the planet in our solar system, so we can say that our sun is very huge. But if you see the stars configuration, stars distribution, so this our sun is not very huge in the entire universe. So many stars are there, very massive one. So our sun is yellow star and average size star. Average size means around not very less, not very massive. So this is just average size star, and And the size of sun is very, very large. So even 13 lakh planet Earth can fit inside the sun. So you can imagine how big our sun is. 13 lakh Earth-sized planet can exactly fit into the sun. So this is the how big our sun. So how big the sun is? So you just see the comparison. So this is the sun, and those are the rest of planets. Jupiter and other Earth is here. So you can see how big the sun is and how small the Earth is. So this simply you can compare. So our sun is very, very big. So next. And how small the sun is. Sun is as I told earlier, sun is very big if we compare it in our solar system. But if we are going to compare it in the galaxy, in the universe, then sun is not very big star. So you can see how many big stars are there. This is the Antares, Betelgeuse, and Aldebaran. Those are very, very big stars, and this is our sun. This is just dot. Even you can't see it. It's a very dot, just faint. So this is the thing actually. So how big our universe is, how many huge bright stars are there, and even our sun looks like very faint if we are going to compare our star with other massive stars. So now we are talking about the life cycle of the sun, possible end of the sun. So what is the life actually? So as I told earlier, the life is basically depends on the how much fuel is left. So for the sun, nuclear fusion reaction is going on at the core. So fuel means hydrogen. How much hydrogen is left at the core? That is the fuel actually. So it depends. So far the age of the sun is 4.5 billion years. Right now we are here. So this is the position. So what is the age of the sun? 4.5 billion years. But many hydrogen is left inside the sun, and at the rate the hydrogen is changing into the helium. So it will take another 4.55 billion years to finish the total fuel, to finish the complete hydrogen at the core. So sun will survive there another 4.5 billion years. So no problem. We have plenty of time actually. So this is simple. What is the life cycle of the sun? So after the end of sun, at end of its life, sun will change into the red giant star. Next. So life cycle is depends on the mass. Mass is very, very important factor in terms of astronomy. So if we are talking about something, some astronomical sources, some star, black hole, neutron star, any other things, the main thing is the mass. Mass is the important thing. So based on the mass, we can say that what is the age of that particular star, what is the lifetime of that stellar system or that particular body. So if mass is very high, because ultimately the nuclear reaction is going on at the core, or the hydrogen is going to burn at the core. So if the mass is very high, so that means the burning rate is very high. Burning rate will be very high. And if mass is very less, then burning rate will be very less. Because if mass is less, that means temperature is also less. If temperature is less, then it will take much time to convert hydrogen into helium. So automatically, you can see that if the star is faint, if the star is small, then it will take much time to complete its life. So ultimately, the life cycle depends on the mass of a star, and the lifetime is inversely proportional to burning rate. So if burning rate is high, that means lifetime is less. If burning rate is less, lifetime will be high. So those are inversely proportional to each other. Yeah. So this is the chart. You can see how star's life goes on, and this is the stellar nursery from where star forms. This is the molecular cloud region. So once star forms, so different type of star can be formed. A small star, massive stars can be formed. So here I have shown some comparison. This is the lower mass star, and this is the massive star. So lower mass means this is our sun type star, like sun or slightly larger than the sun. But massive star means which is 3 times, 5 times, or even 10 times to the mass of our sun. So for the lower mass star, it will change into the red giant. So like our sun, this is our sun. So sun will change into red giant after 4.5 billion years. So what happens after that? After that, once the nuclear reaction stops, then all the material, because there are many things, because all the reaction is going on, all the production of elements is going on in a star, so all the matter thrown into the interstellar space and the core element left, that core is known as the white dwarf. And all the material thrown into the interstellar space, like this type structure, that is called the planetary nebula. So, for case of the massive stars, if a star is very massive, then it will convert into the red supergiant and then undergo supernova explosion. Supernova means a very big explosion of a star. If a star's mass is very huge, like 5 times of our sun's mass, 10 times of our sun's mass, then it will undergo supernova explosion. And after the explosion, the two products can be possible, the neutron star or black hole. Those things can be formed after the death of a massive star. So this is the beginning of the end. So stars begin to die when they run out of the hydrogen. This is the simple thing. So if there is no hydrogen, that means it's going to die. If no fuel is left, then stars is going to die. So that is the thing actually. So for the lower mass star, when all the hydrogen is used up of a lower mass star, then it will change into the red giant. So next please. Yeah. So this is, you can see that from the main sequence which I show you that in the diagonal line, all stars align in a diagonal line. Those are the main sequence star. So what happens after the main sequence star? It will change into the red giant and then planetary nebula, and then last the remaining core left, that is the white dwarf. So next, yeah. So you can see, but what is the condition? What is the mass of a white dwarf? So this is the picture of Professor Subramanian Chandrasekhar. Subramanian Chandrasekhar also worked very for those type of stars for white dwarfs, and Chandrasekhar gives the limit of a white dwarf. What should be the maximum mass of a white dwarf? So the maximum mass, he explained the maximum mass of a white dwarf should be 1.4 solar mass. If a star's mass is 1. If a white dwarf mass is 1.4 solar mass, that is stable, that is white dwarf. If mass exceeds than 1.4 solar mass, then it will not stable now. After that, electron degeneracy pressure will not work there, because electron degeneracy is the thing to make it's in the stable position actually of a white dwarf. So you can see this is the picture of white dwarf. It looks like very faint, and this is the nearby star, Sirius star. This is the very faint. This is white dwarf. So how, this is the some illustration. So how the white dwarf accrete matter from the nearby star. So this is the white dwarf and this is the nearby star. Similarly, you can see, so this white dwarf is starting to accrete matter from the nearby star. So this is the very huge star with this white dwarf. So accrete matter from this and make the accretion disk, and again the nuclear reaction is going on in the disk and all these things. So this is the basically white dwarf is the end product of a average mass star. So like our sun. So our sun's end product is white dwarf. Yeah, next please. So for what happened the high mass star, so low mass star change into the red giant, but the high mass star is changed into the red supergiant, and they undergo such supernova explosion as I told. Just next slide. Yeah. So if so this is the simple thing. So a neutron star is formed when the mass is around 3 times, around 3 times to the mass of the sun. Then after the supernova explosion, it will change into neutron star. But if a mass is heavier than 3 solar mass, 5 solar mass, or 10 solar mass, then it will automatically, after the supernova explosion, you will see a black hole is there. So black hole can be formed. So next. So this is the simple picture. After the main sequence star, so it will change into, this is for the massive star actually. This is not the average, this is for the high mass star. So now it will change into the red supergiant, and then after the supernova, after a big explosion of a star, then it will change into neutron star, and black hole depends on the mass. If mass is less, then it will change to neutron star. If mass is very high, then it will change into black hole. So next. Yeah. So what is neutron star? This is some basic thing. So neutron stars are the tiny, dense, rapidly rotating stars. Actually, those are the rotating stars. As I told earlier, if mass is 2 to 3 times, then it will be after the supernova explosion, it will change into neutron star. And some neutron star shows very rapidly rotating beam of electromagnetic waves. So those are called the pulsar. So pulsars are also you can say that the next stage of the neutron star or type of the neutron star, when the rotating rate is very fast, very rapid, then it will show some jet kind of things. So those are called the pulsar, and the mass range of those pulsar is around 1.35 times to the mass of the sun. So next. Yeah. So black hole is also, if the mass is 5 or 10 times to the mass of sun, then it will change into the black hole. And as you know that black hole is a body where even no light can escape from that surface. So that is actually black hole. So, next. Now, so I will give you some information about the star cluster. So as I told, from the molecular cloud, there are large number of stars can be formed. So large number means tens, 100 or 1,000 number of stars can be formed together. So that is called star cluster. When many stars are forming from the molecular cloud, then it is called star cluster. And the classification of star clusters are globular cluster or open star cluster. Globular cluster means when there are some 10,000 to 1 lakh number of stars in a small region. So those are globular, very compact. You can see a large number of stars are there, and this is very old. Actually, if you estimate the age of globular cluster, so you will see those are very old as that of our Milky Way galaxy. So what is the age? Around 12.7, 12.6 gigayear is the age of our Milky Way galaxy. So generally, globular clusters are very old, 10 to 12 billion years old. So those are very important sources to understand the formation and evolution of our Milky Way galaxy. And open clusters are very young. So some stars are, because star formation process is going on. So at this time, many stars can be formed. So they are in the process to form a new star. So in open cluster, you will see all are very new, very young, massive stars are there in the open cluster. So here is some group of some famous open cluster, and this is Pleiades. Pleiades cluster you can see through the naked eye. So if sky is very clear, then you can see this Pleiades cluster very clearly. Some group of this star. So this is again the global, how globular cluster looks like. So this is the picture as you can see earlier. So in globular clusters, the age is 10 to 12 billion years old, spherical in shape, and gas and dust are absent here. This is because this is very old. As I told, globular clusters are very old. It means there is no interstellar gas, no dust, nothing is there actually, no metal is there. So metallicity is around zero. Metallicity is very zero. So population
A PhD graduate from Jadavpur University, previously a project scientist at Indian Center for Space Physics, pursued postdocs in X-ray astronomy and Earth-space interaction at Mackenzie Presbyterian University and IIT Bombay. Notably, he contributed to the Daksha X-ray Gamma Ray Space Satellite project during his time at IIT Bombay. Currently an assistant professor at Indian Center for Space Physics, his research focuses on solar hard X-ray imaging, satellite development and expertise in space radiation, Monte Carlo simulation and space weather science. Could we have a round of applause for Sir? Welcome, sir. Welcome, sir. The stage is all yours. Please.
Okay. Thank you. I thank you, the BC Roy Engineering College, the principal who was there for a long time, and Dr. Saurabh Ranjan Babu and Saurabh Bhattacharya, my old pal, to invite me here, and the lovely cluster of students who are there to attend this talk and gain some knowledge and experience. So I am from Indian Center for Space Physics. So this is a renowned Institute of Astronomy and Space Science in Kolkata, and it is almost 25 years old. This is going to be 25 years ceremony in the next year. And okay, so next slide, please. The speaker before me has told you about many things about the astronomical star formation and journey of star to their lifetime and death of star and how they make complex objects, etc. So he has covered many things about astronomy and astrophysics. What I am going to do is I am going to tell you something about how we detect those things and how we study those things. Oh, that is one first topic. I am going to tell you about how we detect and observe those things and how we study scientifically those things with telescopes and many other instruments. So this is you know there are lots of messengers, lots of types of messengers from astronomy and space that comes to us to the Earth. And we capture them and we scientifically analyze them scientifically and statistically. So those messages comes in various forms. So first we know the spectrum. The spectrum consists of a broad part of wavelengths from radio wave to X-ray, gamma ray, and so on. And here I include some telescope, optical telescope. This is a small optical telescope that we can use ourselves personally. This is a big, large observatory telescope, maybe a few meters of diameter, and we are going to have 30 meters and 40 meters, more than 40 meters telescope in few years. And this is a James Webb Space Telescope. The predecessor was the Hubble Space Telescope. This is the most advanced space telescope nowadays in space, and it is picturing the universe in infrared. And this is the radio telescope. There should be a large array of radio telescope to take any good data from space, from anything, from black hole to supernova to anything. And this is the X-ray, high energy telescope, high energy X-ray gamma ray telescope. This is New Star telescope. There are many X-ray telescopes like Chandra, Integral, New Star, our own AstroSat, Aditya L1, etc. And this is very high energy telescope or called Serenkov telescope. This is one of their thing is in our Ladakh, and this collect more higher up to gigahertz, giga eV, or maybe 10 to the power 15, 16 eV kind of gamma rays they can capture, and they tell many things about the high energy processes in the space. And there is ICE2 telescope. This is for another messenger. This is called neutrino messenger. So inside every star, like sun, there are lots of nuclear processes going on, and every nuclear process there are neutrinos are produced. And neutrino doesn't interact with us, even with the Earth. Neutrino just pass through us. Through our bodies, there are billions of neutrinos are passing bodies at each point of time, but we don't understand, we don't interact with them, we don't feel them. So neutrino can be detected by some rare interaction inside some big detectors like this is Antarctica. Ice cube detector inside is there a big ice cube facility. There are big inside big array of DFT detector photomultiplier tubes that can detect neutrino interaction very rarely, but it can detect something. And this is balloon ball instrument that we can send to space to take X-ray picture of sun, gamma ray burst, supernova, and many more things. Because for X-ray doesn't come in the Earth surface, it is blocked by the atmosphere. So we have to go above the atmosphere to get the X-ray or gamma ray burst. So all these X-ray satellites are set up in balloon or in space satellite. X-ray instrument are set up there in space. And this is the most recent Virgo telescope. So LIGO is the gravitational wave detector. So nowadays multi-passenger astronomy is going on. Gravitational wave was first detected few years ago, though it was predicted by Einstein 100 years ago. But it is only recently detected. So this type of new type of big detector, and our India is going to set up a new LIGO India in few years. Next. So these are the mirror lenses using detector. This is optical or other similar wavelength detector. This is a big mirror consisting of very adaptive optics set mirror, and this type of telescope like Keck telescope and many other types of telescopes there, and there is going to be 30-meter telescope and large area telescope and many more such big telescopes that can see up Big Bang, very 200 years of Big Bang or so. So in telescope we use either lenses or mirrors, concentrate light on a detector, and then take the light and do some analysis with electronics and computer. Okay. In X-ray we use ranging incidence angle detector where mirrors just bend the X-ray by small amount, and there are lots of layers of mirrors which can convert those X-ray in a detector. So because X-ray is very high energy, it is very difficult to bend or convert X-rays, unlike normal light. So this is Chandra X-ray telescope detector, X-ray telescope mirror. So it is a very concentrated layer of mirror using Chandra. So these are the things inside a telescope, like mirror lenses. Then those mirror lenses convert all those rays, maybe normal light or X-rays, etc., in some detectors. So detectors, what happens in detectors? There are photoelectric detectors, many things. So those light concentrated on those detectors can produce photoelectric effects and free electrons, etc. Those are converted into current or voltages, and on those, for a single photon, a pulse is generated from which we can find what is the energy and what is the time period of time of coming of the photon, from which we can find the spectrum of the source and light of the source. So these are scintillator detectors like glass light detectors, and photomultiplier tubes are used to enhance the detection performance. And these are CCD detectors that is used in our small camera as well as very large optical telescope and X-ray telescope as well. These are cadmium zinc telluride detectors. These are very pricey detectors, and these are the setup. So these type of detectors are used in our own AstroSat and Aditya L1, and I usually used to work with such detectors during my PhD in a project. It is called RT2 coronal RT2 project. So my PhD was using this detector to find the image of sun solar flares, and so we get the photon concentrated on a detector producing electrons, and those electrons are magnified by photomultiplier tubes or something and produces a path, and those paths are then analyzed with electronic circuit. this is the most of engineering job, electronic engineering job that they are going on. After that, we detect those pulses and we do some statistical analysis or physical or such analysis to find the properties of the cell. So that is what is going on in those detectors and in our analysis. Okay, next. So now what we are going to see with those detectors? So there are many spectrum or wavelength or any other like cosmic ray, neutrino or gravitational wave, many such things are there. But as I work in X-ray astronomy, so I am only going to talk about only X-ray astronomical sources. So this is a sky view of X-ray astronomical sources, not that elongated, but here it is showing. So this is our Milky Way galaxy, and inside the Milky Way galaxy center there is big supermassive black hole, and lots of stars and things are there. Those are emanating X-ray. There is Scorpion, H1, Cygnus, which are binary X-ray sources, where there is maybe a black hole, a neutron star, and some accretion processes going on, and X-ray is coming out of those X-ray gamma ray. And this is supernova remnant. When a star, big star dies, the remnant of the outer layer of the star remains as a supernova remnant, where lots of high energy processes goes on and X-ray comes. And this is our own Crab nebula. When a small star dies, there will not be a supernova, but it will be there like a molecular cloud or so. So it is called nebula. So our Crab nebula, we can see two such detectors with balloon and such instrument. And this is our sun, or maybe a typical star. In sun there are many processes going on, magnetic processes going on, where most of energy comes out in form of X-ray, like solar flare or mass ejection, that I will go later. And when a big star dies, 8 to 10 times the star, then supernova is formed, and in supernova there is always a jet. So in this process, very high energy process, very high energy X-ray and gamma rays can come out. And this is a thing where a small star dies. After the supernova, one small and big star, the supernova happened. The outer layer remains as a nebula. This is a photo of Crab nebula in X-ray. So, and this is after the outer part is made a supernova remnant or nebula. The inner part is formed as inner part formed a black hole or neutron star or white dwarf or something. So, this is called a compact object here. And if a big star comes around the compact object, then this attract or this just suck some mass from this big star to this compact object, then an accretion disk will form. And in this accretion disk, there are lots of high energy processes going on, physics going on, chemistry going on. And from there, a jet can emanate, and from there, X-ray, gamma ray, and very high energy photons can come. Next. So, our Earth is bombarded with lots of photons and other messengers from space, cosmic ray. This is a general source, not sun, but any other space sources. So lots of photons are coming out and bombarding with our atmosphere. So my intuition was, why don't we use the whole atmosphere of the Earth as a detector, not just sending small detectors in balloon or satellite. In satellite, why we don't use the whole atmosphere of the Earth as a detector? Next. Yeah. So this is our Earth, this is our atmosphere, and lots of things, cosmic rays, sunspots, solar flare, gamma ray bursts, and UV bursts from other things, X-ray, gamma ray plus, always bombarding on Earth, and we can see that they are changing the atmospheric composition, atmospheric ion and electron density, etc. So if we can catch these changes and then analyze, then we can find what is going on in the space. What type of rays are coming from which sources? So this was my intention. I did this in my after my PhD. So it is a new field of study that I started and I developed. So this is the ionosphere. Ionosphere is the region of the atmosphere containing plasma consisting of three ions and electrons. So this is above 50 kilometers or so, up to 2000 kilometers or so. So there are layers of atmosphere, different layers, atmosphere with different types of electron density radiation that I will show later. So atmosphere is there due to the solar ultraviolet. So ultraviolet from the sun comes out and bombarded in the atmosphere, and they produce ion or electron density that goes under many chemical reaction and from the ionized plasma part of the atmosphere. And UV and X-ray from solar flare and any other process also comes, and from the from radiation in atmosphere density changes, atmosphere density that we can detect. And it is also emitted by solar cosmic energetic particles from sun. Like from sun, there are lots of protons and high energy electrons coming out, and those bombard in the ionosphere, and those changes the ionosphere characteristic. That we can catch, and we can study the sun, solar flare, and also about other than this, from gamma ray bar and supernova and many other high energy sources, crystal sources, from there also X-ray gamma ray comes and changes the ionosphere density. So now, how can we expect what is going on in the ionosphere due to these flares, due to this gamma ray bar or anything that is going on in the ionosphere? How can we catch it? We cannot send any balloon in the ionosphere because balloon can go only up to 40 kilometers, but ionosphere is above 60 kilometers or 50 kilometers or so. And we cannot send any spacecraft like aeroplane or something. Or the rocket can go there, but this will go and come down. You cannot do any long-term survey or any long-term analysis of those situations. So how can we do the range from say above 50 kilometers up to 100 kilometers or 1000 kilometers? So the process we use is through radio analysis. So what we use? So we said radio wave. And radio wave when emanated from any station, radio station, it can be divided into two parts. One passing to the ground and one going above. And one going above is reflected from the atmosphere many times, and when detected, we can find a combination of these two waves, I waves and ground waves, in some detector. And the I wave part, when it is coming from the ionosphere, reflected from the ionosphere, it is somewhat absorbed. So its initial energy is not found in the final detected station. So how the ionosphere is absorbing the radio wave, that gives us the state of the ionosphere. If ionosphere is very dense, electron density or ion density, this radio wave will be different. If ionosphere is normal, like there is no solar flare or gamma ray burst, ionosphere is normal, then that will also be reflected in this sky that we get in the station. So that thing is from flares, from gamma ray burst, from anything. Photons come, this changes the atmospheric electron density, this changes the how much energy of the radio wave that ionosphere absorbs, and from this we can find what is going on there and what is going on in the space. Okay. So now we use D layer of the ionosphere. This is atmospheric electron density layer. The atmospheric electron density as a function of height. This is height, this is electron density per meter cube. So that there are lots of peaks. We use this part only to find in our program to find what type of radiation is coming from space and changing the atmospheric electron density things, and we detect this by our radio wave signal. So this is 60 to 95 kilometer only. It is produced by solar Lyman alpha usually produced by from sun. It is emitted by X-ray and gamma ray from sun and many other exotic astrophysical objects, and it is detected by outbound radio frequency radio waves. Okay. So what we can get the radio waves? So radio waves are emanated by many stations which are used to communicate with ships like naval ships or military ships, etc. So there are BTS, there are AWS in Australia. Those they send VLF radio wave, and those radio waves are used to communicate between ships and navigate those. But we use those waves in our course to study the space. So here it is emanating, here we are detecting after coming from ionosphere, and there is a loop antenna, there is a Huygens processor, then we see them in this way we use those detector and we use signal to find the characteristic of the ionosphere. So 3 to 30 kHz is the VLM part of the radio. It is reflected from the ionosphere, propagates around ground, and used in submarine communication. It is free for us. We don't have to evaluate these VLM. It is free for us for submarine communication and naval communication. But we use it for our scientific study. Now, what we see? This is a solar flare. So you know about solar flare. In sun, there are lots of magnetic processes going on, and in UV here, maximum to minimum, and there are some magnetic loop after the transport region. Magnetic loop appears, and from here lots of photons, X-ray, gamma ray, and all other particles photons are coming out. So this is the size of the Earth compared to this solar flare. So the solar flares are usually very big in size, like Jupiter or so. And this is the coronal mass ejection. Here, instead of photons coming out from the sun, a chunk of plasma, fluid is coming from the sun and emanating from the sun. So those fluids propagate to the space, and that can come up and disrupt our atmosphere and communication system. So this is called coronal mass ejection. This comes out from the corona of the sun, the outer layer of the sun. So this is detected by a solar observatory from ESA, European Space Agency. Okay. Now, when this solar flare of coronal mass ejection comes and interacts with Earth, this is the Earth, this is Earth magnetosphere, and there is magnetic field, like dipolar magnetic field. Those things come and those put pressure on the magnetic field. So the near side, the magnetic field is concentrated, or magnetosphere is concentrated towards the Earth, and the Earth side is elongated. So this is the magnetosphere configuration of Earth into the solar pressure, and it changes when the solar coronal mass ejection, the solar flare comes in happen. So solar storm is a very useful phenomena we study. Okay. Now this is the same picture. The solar flare when happens in the sun, those effects can be seen in VLM radio frequency radio signal. So this blue one is the normal day radio frequency signal. This is during the dawn, in the morning, and this is during the night, and this is during the daytime. As the ionosphere is going to changes in electromagnetic during the day. So this is a very weak and clean profile. But when solar flares or any such thing happen in this way, there are lots of solar flares going on in a single day. So the atmospheric electromagnetic is changing, and those changes are detected in regular frequency signal. So these are the corresponding to each and every solar flare that's occurs in that day. Okay. So in VLM, 12 kV energy of the solar photon, X-ray photon produces these division anomalies, and X-ray enhanced electron density produces modulation of amplitude and phase. So in VLM we study and both amplitude and phase of the wave, and we get this type of picture, and these are also called sudden ionospheric disturbances of fields. And there are many types of solar flare according to the energy, how violent the flare is, like A, B, C, M and X. X is the most violent solar flare, and then A, C. So each one is 10 times less violent than the next one. Now we studied N plus solar flare and S plus solar flare. So for N plus solar, X plus solar flare, the detection in anomalies in the VLM daytime profile is larger than the E class. We can also detect for C class and B class solar flares also. So these things are detected in our new pattern and detection in ICSP, Indian Center for Space Physics, in Sitapur and Kolkata. Okay. Now the observation part we use here in NWC or here in VDA. There are many radio facilities or transmitters which are used to navigate the normal ships as well as the submarine, and we use those data after coming back from ionosphere. We use after multiple interactions from ionosphere, those data are collected in our Kolkata branch, and we do all the calculation and do the science, astrophysics. Okay. Now, other than solar flares, what we do the gamma ray burst, the X-ray gamma ray coming out from gamma ray burst, both long and short gamma ray burst, and other things, and we study those with the regular frequency data. And this is a supernova produced gamma ray burst. So, supernova is the end process of a big star. After when fuel is ended, it is going to a big explosion, but supernova, and the jet comes out. Okay. Always the jet is related to supernova. This is called long gamma ray burst or long GRB, which lasts greater than 2 seconds. Now this is short gamma ray burst. Short gamma ray burst are usually produced by the collision of two massive compact objects, like two neutron stars, two white dwarfs, a neutron star or black hole, or a white dwarf or black hole, a neutron star or white dwarf, any such thing. Only two black hole when collide cannot produce this type of thing because there is no radiation there. So other compact objects and black hole, everything can produce this type of supernova, and this is not supernova. This is a collision, and they after they merge or collide, they form a new compact object, new neutron star or black hole. From there also progenitor is formed, and there jets are coming out, and many other radiation is coming out. Next. Now, when those jets, now the new thing is produced, okay, new black hole or new neutron star, they are always rotating. Now, when if by chance those jets are for a few seconds of time, those jets are rotated towards Earth, we can see by telescope. We can see them by telescope. Then they are actually for GRB. Otherwise, everything is for GRB. Only those things when jet is there and those jets for few seconds are towards oriented towards Earth, we call that gamma ray burst. Okay. Now the thing is gamma ray burst is in just 2 seconds or 2 seconds, it can produce the same amount of energy the sun will produce in the whole lifetime of 10 billion years or so. And if there is a gamma ray burst in our own Milky Way, we will be just destroyed in seconds. So in a galaxy there are few such gamma ray bursts or something in many million years or in billion years or so. So we are very lucky that we are not getting a gamma ray burst. Not lucky, but this is natural, statistically very valuable. Now there are other things like this is a neutron star. There are lots of things going on in neutron star. There are strong magnetic fields. There are lots of bursts, and there are repeated bursts also. So these are called short gamma repeaters. There are repeated bursts of X-ray gamma ray from neutron star that are reaching Earth that we can detect in our ionosphere and VLM network. This is from a neutron star. Okay. Now we have detected many GRB and short gamma ray bursts when I was doing postdoc in Brazil in a tablet VLM network in Brazil. This NPA, ESPF and RY there are three. This is the emission station, and this is VLM emission station. This is the receiving station. So this is a big tablet network in Brazil and the Pacific. So I use this network data for our work. Now, here is the profile of a short gamma ray repeater. So this is the picture that was taken by a telescope, space telescope, I forgot the name of the telescope. And this short gamma ray repeater means repeated burst of X-ray gamma ray that is named J1505418 on 22 January 2009, and this produced many consecutive bursts of gamma ray and X-ray that is detected by both satellites in space by NASA. So these are X-ray gamma ray peaks due to this repeated burst, and the corresponding ionospheric disturbance is detected in those satellite networks, and those are given by these two, one from ROI station and one from NPM station. Okay, next. So what I was doing to produce computation to numerical simulation that this should be the case, means that type of signal in radio or VLA we should get and reproduce the whole thing in computer simulation, through Monte Carlo simulation and chemical modeling of the ionosphere and so on. Okay, next. So this modeling, there are some initial effort, but I did my research on this for few years, and I did the first time that modeling, the complete modeling. And the first part of the modeling was computation of ionization rate X-ray to Monte Carlo simulation. So there is an Earth atmosphere, and from above, from gamma ray burst or solar flare, everything, photons are coming out, falling on the Earth ionosphere and producing all the ions and electrons. This is the first part. The second part is those ions and electrons produced, they go through many electronic processes, electronic interaction with atoms, interaction with molecules, and mutual interaction between electrons. There are dissociation process. Many things are going on. After many things going on, some electron passes as a free electron. So this is the chemistry part that is going on in the ionosphere. From a specific electron density variation in ionosphere due to those pairs of gamma ray burst or short gamma ray repeater, etc. So this is I use a simplified chemistry, but I want to use a more rigorous chemistry later. And after this we get the steady state electron density variation due to those layers and all other sources. And then I use a radio wave propagation code. This is the AWPC model, low wave propagation characteristics code that is used to find ultimately what should be the effect of radio wave going through this ionosphere and Earth waveguide. Next. Okay. So this is for an N+ solar flare. This is for N+ solar flare. This is NASA's GOES satellite, GOES, GOES satellite data for X-ray and gamma ray light card for those two solar flares, N+ and S+, light card. Those I concentrated on in my study. And this is the VLF effect on VLF that was produced by those solar flares here. Okay, in our RCSP campus in Texas. Next. And to reproduce this type of solar flares and gamma ray burst, I used the chemical model and the Monte Carlo simulation model. And this is the input for the gamma ray, short gamma ray repeater X-ray card from Fermi data, not both actually. I told I wish to. Yeah. This is from Fermi space satellite GBM detector gamma ray burst, short gamma ray repeater data, and the spectrum for this one of the bars I used to find the Monte Carlo, to go to the Monte Carlo simulation and find how much photon is falling on the Earth, and how much energy is generated, how much ion electron density is generated. Okay. Then this is the electron density generated at different heights for the N+ or H+ solar flare, and this is electron density generated at different heights for the short gamma repeater. So we have the height that you can see from 54 kilometers up to 82 kilometers. So all those height electron density are changing with the flare and as well as from the short gamma repeater. Next. These are all found from Monte Carlo simulation. Okay, and electron density chemical model. Then I used those stabilized electron density after Monte Carlo simulation and then electron density modeling. We found that then we fed model, AWPC propagation capability board, we found that our simulation data, this dotted one or dashed one, is more or less matching with the actual data of PLF we are getting. So we cannot regenerate computationally this small variation, but overall matching is there, and the slope, everything of matching. So this is for the A plus pair, and this is for the X plus pair. Next. Now, for the short number also, these zigzag things are actual observation of two stations, radio station, and this green and blue curves are actually obtained from the simulation, and we are seeing that these are actually very good matches other than the zigzag thing. So after the simulation and after the computer processing, we know exactly what is going on in the ionosphere and how those space sources, those X-ray gamma rays from those exotic space sources as well as our own solar flare are actually impinging on the Earth and changing the ionospheric dynamics. And from there we can study those space sources, we can find the spectrum and light curve, what is going on actually the gamma ray and solar flare. Okay, how much extra gamma ray is coming? Next. So I have another paper where I try to find out actually what was the spectrum, this energy distribution of the solar flare from our PLF data. So this is a complex process distribution and something many things are there to identify electron density and find out the ion density, and from there to infer what was the actual total spectrum that is falling on the atmosphere or ionosphere, etc. So this is a reverse process to find actually what was the X-ray gamma ray spectrum from the solar flare. So I was able to find this from our data, so that we can now use the whole ionosphere as a detector to find out actually what is going on in sun, what is going on in supernova, gamma ray burst, what gamma ray beta, neutron star, what is going on there only by studying the ionosphere. Next. Okay, thank you.
We are deeply grateful for your esteemed presence and for gracing us with a profound knowledge. Your insights have enriched us all. Thank you, sir. Now I would request Mr. Jaba Kobiraj on behalf of Vishwananda Foundation to hand over a token of veneration to Dr. Shreya Palit. Please, ma'am.